Hello, my friends. It is I, Rich Filiberto, DM Philly, out here on the internet, your friendly neighborhood podcaster, back with you again for another week to talk about The Acolyte. Season 1, Episode 6, Teach, Corrupt. We're back to the split titles. Is over and we're just getting started. That's what I used to say, and sometimes it forces itself out through a Pavlovian response. I, of course, am not alone. I am joined by my Padawan learner, the one and only Taylor Ball. Hello there, Taylor.
Hey, hi, what's going on?
Living it up. We're podcasting. What is going on? How are you?
I'm super. It's everything's fine. Nothing is wrong.
E-
Everything's good.
Everything is super as a podcast. I can't get away from it.
Uh-oh.
Uh, I was looking for the Anakin. We're podcasting now, but I really
Oh,
missed
it's
my delivery.
now this is
I
podcasting.
know. I can never quite get my episode 1 quotes right. Don't hold it against me,
I think that's
fandom.
okay.
It is hot and murky, and the state of the world in this particular galaxy has grown very dire in recent days. So
Mhm.
take with me many grains of salt today, my friends, as I'm slightly frazzled and trying to focus on a galaxy far, far away a long time ago.
Mhm.
Taylor, we got episode 6. I'm going to, before I say another thing, tell everybody go subscribe to all the podcast feeds where we're talking about a bunch of good TV. The Boys season 4 is halfway through. House of the Dragon is really just kind of ramping up as we're going along. There's going to be a podcast coming out this week as I'm getting together with the Tanya Stark to talk about The Bear season 3. Some mixed reviews coming back from folks there, though I have certainly got a lot to say about it. So go follow us on all the places at Screen, Page Potter, all of our social medias. There's a link tree in the bios to all of our socials that'll bring you into the Discord where you can find us directly. And this particular podcast, Taylor, they can go and find on YouTube. We're recording live and it's there right now. It's happening.
Go like and subscribe and punch that like button or whatever the YouTubers say.
There we go. I did a video effect. Taylor, episode 6. We're closing in on the final chapters of season 1 of The Acolyte in our 8-episode run. It feels like we really just started this, but also I feel like I've been here forever.
Yep.
What did you think this week? What'd you think of episode 6, Teach, Corrupt?
Okay, so this was really funny because I was fully convinced that this was episode 5 for some
Me
reason. I was like,
too.
right. I was like, no, we did episode 5. We did
Counting is hard.
that. So that was where I was coming in immediately. But I think that this one overall, I'm like remaining positive. I think I'm like still in the positive, even though like some of these like story beats are like they are like building in frustration, and some of the similar like the things that we talked about last week are still persisting. But I I think the more I watch, the more I'm like, this would work way better as a binge.
Yeah, the great and wise master Brendan Fitzpatrick, I believe, made this statement pretty early on. And I feel like, hopefully, in retrospect, I will agree with it. But my sentiment definitely lies there now. I mean, I talked a lot last week about my critiques and my criticisms, and I hope that that wasn't too frustrating for anybody out there listening. I think that there's a real fervent fan base that is emerging around the core of this show, despite all of the kind of bad faith reviews and critiques that are flying around out there. And I think the very good faith, earnest critiques that a lot of Star Wars fans have about the show so far, because I do think probably the kindest way I can articulate my overall opinion is just that it's really uneven. There are parts of it that I'm enjoying a lot. There are parts of it that I'm really excited about and that seem very cool, but I'm coming away frustrated pretty often. And hopefully, with the totality of the story told and the whole narrative in front of us, because there is a very intentional withholding of information that is just starting to create like bad friction. You know, there's always a little bit of friction when you engage with media, certainly with fiction. There's friction in the fiction. There's something there. But, that thought-provoking art that leaves you with questions after you come away from it, where you linger on what's going to happen next week and how you feel about the decisions of the characters that we've seen so far. And that, in the best of art, I think is fundamental. That friction is what kind of creates the spark that can like light your own flame of passion in you and will turn a Star Wars fan into a Star Wars creator across 30
Mm.
years, right? And so in that way, I don't think that it's inherently bad that the show is challenging in terms of the way it's presenting the information. But I do think that sometimes you come across the bad friction. And a lot of the logistical specifics that I honed in on last week are like that bad friction for me. And this lack of clarity. As we end the episode, I'm going to start right at the end, Taylor,
Yeah.
on this cliffhanger of Master Saul. I've been waiting a very long time to talk to you about this. Fade to black. And again, we talked about the cliffhanger coming out of episode 4. And the optimistic version is I cannot wait to find out what is going to happen
Yes.
next week. And I don't think falling in that space this week. I just found it frustrating in the bad kind of way that I'm like,
Mhm.
oh my God.
I was like,
my God.
please, Master Soul, no.
And it's clear, again, there's obvious symmetry and intention in what
Yeah.
they're doing here. I mean, it's right down to all of the branding. It's right here above us of this eclipse that has been kind of shifting the whole way. We have the two mirror twins. The poetry rhymes. And so in that way, I think one of the things the Acolyte has been consistently doing well across all of its episodes is the way that it's empowering themes. I think that they're really good at enunciating their themes episode to episode, and the kind of greater theme of duality and reflection of the show. We're getting it in the imagery, we're getting it in the symbolism that's kind of buried in the context of the show, and we're getting it in like a lot of the dialogue in certain ways. And so that's all cool. But not knowing what the answer is, who's to say whether or not I'm going to find it satisfying? And I feel like I've just had my foundation of confidence worried away by this friction to the point that I don't feel like I'm standing on sure ground anymore, Taylor. Is that all fair? Am I like couching everything in too many metaphors and just being a jerk?
No, I think that's super fair. Like I feel like I'm not on unstable ground. I'm going to like I'm scooping dirt and like packing it on and holding myself up is in this structure. Cause I think
Are we building a wigwam? Because I do know how to do that, and they're actually very cool.
where did you pull that from?
I don't know. You started talking about dirt and structures, and I thought of Rupert's flood and shelter on the beach and Survivor All Stars, and that always makes me think about wigwams because I'm like, Rupert, why did you build a wigwam on the beach? That is
Why did you build a
Rupert, why? 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 Why would you build a wigwam on the beach? Sorry, we're really off on a tangent.
Yeah, sorry, we're just like woo woo. It's okay.
So you're building a foundation in your wigwam of earth.
Yes, I'm just gonna keep stable. I'm gonna stand here and hold fast until the end because I'm really firmly in the if I could sit here and watch, which I could, all of us, any of us could just sit here, watch the entire season in a day and be like, gosh, that was nice. Like, I would think I would be happy as a clam.
I get that sentiment too. Part of my frustration is coming away from these real short run times on the episodes, and that's leaving me wanting a little bit more. It's not singular to the Acolyte. It's been a consistent theme for me in a lot of the Star Wars shows. I feel like it really hurt The Mandalorian season 3. I understand that there are budgetary restrictions and restraints, and the creators are operating within the lines. There was a great interview with Leslye Headland over on Collider this week. And she didn't openly talk a lot about the short run times, but she did know we're trying to accomplish a lot, and it can be really tough to do when you only have half an hour every week. So it feels to me like this is not a creative directed decision. And certainly as we're talking about the show in the fallout of the kind of dual strikes from the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild last year, everything has gotten more expensive to produce. All of these folks, I mean, the executives, the powers that be, the money behind the art, are very frustrated because they have to pay their writers and they have to pay their actors residuals. And we've got some pretty high profile people on this show that I'm sure ate up a lot of that budget, you know? So that being said, I don't want to be too critical of the short runtimes, but that's part of what that friction that I'm finding is that's unsatisfying. That's not provoking long philosophical musings from me in the late hours after I watch The Acolyte. I'm starting off with a lot of the dark side takes, my friends. I just want to stop down to say I think that this episode did some things really well that I loved. The top of the list is the music, and that may feel like a real backhanded compliment, but the music, I think, throughout the series, there have been some points that it's raised up and I've taken note. But I think this episode, it kind of, because it's so slow and pensive and intimate, the music took center stage in a way that it hasn't for me before. And I felt that it was just so effective. All of the violin work, the strings,
Yes.
kind of right off the bat in that opening scenes, where the content of the scenes left me wanting a little bit, the music made them more than I felt like they were on their own.
Yeah, the music was beautiful. It was one of the things I noted. Like it was really pretty, this like unknown planet that we're on with Osha and Kamir. Which I like. I know there's speculation about what this planet might be. I
Let's talk
haven't
about the play.
Yeah. Also, Rich, can I say you're wearing a Death Star shirt?
I am. Apparently, we ship bad guys now, so I'm just trying to be on the right side of the Acolyte.
Oh, okay.
Of which I think I'll have a little bit to say. Let's talk about the weird planet for a moment. If I say Octo, do you say Gesundheit, or do you know what I'm talking about?
I say Octonauts.
Octonauts.
You probably don't know what that is.
Octonauts. I don't.
Okay,
but
great.
It feels like a thing that Bill and Ted would chant.
It's a children's TV show
during a Wild Stallions concert.
The parents will know, probably.
The parents might know. If there's parents listening to this podcast, you guys are the real heroes. Not all of you wear capes. Godspeed out there, my friends. Octo. So as we get to the end of The Force Awakens, my girl Rey takes that lightsaber that she found. She jumps in the Millennium Falcon with Chewie. They zoom off. They're going to find the lost Jedi, Luke Skywalker. Right. Stop me if you've heard this before. And that movie ends magnificently as she walks up on this just lush, magnificent, your paradise of where you want to retire, of this beautiful, like, I think they're Scottish Highlands out on the coast. And then she's like, bro, did you lose this? And she goes to give Luke his lightsaber back. And then in The Last Jedi, all the stuff that happens in The Last Jedi happens. That's Octo, is the planet with the porgs and the weird, like, milk cows with the green milk, and Luke's jumping around in his thermos of green milk, and
it's blue. Isn't it blue milk?
It's blue milk on Tatooine. It's green milk on Octo.
God damn it! But these little guys aren't porgs, right?
No, the porgs are the penguiny looking.
Yeah, they're the like puffin looking things.
Oh yeah, so you said these aren't porgs. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're not.
Right.
Which I will die for these things.
For these little things?
Yes. I saw a little thing that they're supposed to be like anteaters and ducks, and I love them.
They're very much physically similar to the big green milk cows that Luke is keeping his caloric intake up with during his refuge on Octo, as it was. Right. But so there's been a bunch of speculation about where this place is from. The great Catherine Keen, friend of the podcast, had a friend of hers suggest that this might be the planet Baldemnik, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, but this is
the planet Ball.
It is. It's the planet Baldemnik.
Oh, incredible! I love that.
You gotta like that. It's very green. I could see you hanging out at this place.
Absolutely.
So Baldemnik, ocean planet adorned with rocky tropical islands. It is from the Darth Plagueis novelization, and it is notably being identified by Catherine's friend here because it is a place that you find cortosis metal. And this is a big deal that Darth Manny is
Oh.
going to talk about the cortosis, that it
Yeah, we
blocks
got an
out.
explanation.
Indeed, we did. We get the
Yay.
retroactive cortosis explanation, which
Mhm.
I'll rescind some of my complaints for last week, but what are you going to do?
Yeah,
Did you
fair.
like Osha putting on the sense deprivation helmet at the end when she puts
It
the
was
terrifying
really
helmet on?
scary. It was really scary.
Huge
She was
shades of Vader in Revenge of the
oh.
Sith as like the helmet's coming down over his face. It really, we're
Ah.
evoking a lot of classic Star Warsery in this episode, at least.
I have to say, one of the things that came to mind, like, Kamir does the reveal of like, I can't see in this thing. Like, I'm just using the force. And neither one of us questioned that for a single minute. We knew that this guy can't see out of this helmet and he's just using the force. Like, in we're such nerds. All of you, everybody who is in this boat with us, a bunch of nerds. Cause we all were like, oh yeah, he doesn't need to see out of the helmet. He's just using the force.
Yeah, man. I mean, how many times have I seen these little Jedis with their weird blaster shield masks on, blind deflecting lightsabers? Again, like I feel a little bit tainted sometimes when I come into these Star Wars shows because of the exposure that I've had in so many of the video games where these real fringe ideas are like the central theme of this quest chain or this whole game or whatever it is. So the notion of like the blind Jedi master, like, yeah, not revolutionary. I saw Rogue One. That was my favorite part of Rogue One, Catherine. Like, yes, I love the idea that he's able to track with the Force. I did like a lot of the visual imagery that they used for this symbolism. Again, I think that there's a lot of really effective dissemination of the themes that they're working on here in the way that we're able to evoke some really traditional Star Wars. But so to Octo and Baldemnik, Leslye Headland in this Collider article will say it is supposed to make you think of Octo, and it is not that. It is very intentionally not that. She does not name check Baldemnik, but she does note that the planet is supposed to be relevant because of the cortosis metal. So I think that Catherine's friend is like on the right hunt here. And I think part of what we can extrapolate in that final shot, Osha puts the cortosis helmet on. We've learned that like it shuts the lightsabers down. It blocks out force abilities. So it creates almost like the sensory deprivation tank for Darth Manny inside of it. But I think that he is notably inside of a cave, and caves have like big mythic symbolism across all kinds of stuff that we'll talk about a little bit. But they have especially relevant mythic symbolism in Star Wars, as you and I talk about all the time. And Kymir notes, when you put the helmet on, you bring nothing but the force, and whatever you take with you, Taylor.
And whatever you take with you. I was like, oh, there it is. He said the thing.
We're never that far from Dagobah when we're playing with the force. And that's part of what I think this stuff that I do really appreciate, and some really good thematic writing that is evoking these tones. But I think that there's a greater nerdy theory that we should be attaching ourselves to, which is that the whole cave is in fact this cortosis metal, and that's why he's hiding it here so they can't find him, right?
Whoa, that would be crazy.
Is that just me being like too much of a D&D nerd, or like that makes sense, right?
I mean, it's like putting the magic item in the lead line box, right? It's
right?
Like, yeah. I could see that.
This is the part of me that's scratching my own itches because of my frustrations from last week. That like these little things, these little pieces of logic that interlock, like, well, like, all right, that satisfies me. That makes me happy. That's good. That's good. That's a good choice. Even though you're not really telling us that, and I'm kind of having to do some extra homework and research multiple articles from the showrunner and the creator and get information from very deep cut fans who have read the Darth Plagueis novel to understand anything about cortosis to be able to come to this summation. I do think it's a pretty good theory, and I'm pretty content imagining that he's hiding out in the cortosis cave.
Yeah, that's fun. I like that.
Okay, cool. So notably, he, in the midst of all of this, let's just talk about it a little bit. I saw the wise master Brendan Fitzpatrick slightly frustrated again with the opening of the episode that, like, how did Darth Manny and Osha get to this planet before Saul got back to his spaceship? Did this bother you at all, or is this just the kind of thing that, like, we're looking for problems at this point?
I think we're looking for problems. I think
Okay.
that, like, where this sets is in the timeline is, like, not necessarily the important thing.
It felt to me like an editing choice after the fact for the more powerful cold open that I will not misrepresent myself did really annoy me much more than it should.
That's fair. It's definitely a nit to pick,
It is.
but
And so the
yes.
music is like tremendous, but we
Mhm.
get this whole moment of OSHA waking up in the cave. Caves are important, as we know. I know you talk about nerdery, but you're like a big Greek myth nerd, aren't you?
Yes, I do
So
love a Greek
so
myth.
vibes of Persephone of like she wakes up in the cave after she's left for dead and immediately runs to like drink the liquid to like consume the food left in the underworld for her and like actually seal the deal on her corruption.
Like, OSHA. Like, really? Just the sniff test? You're not even gonna, like, dump a little into your hand? Like, we're just drinking things that are just in this place where you know that you're, like, with the evil, like, come on, girl.
I mean, I think
Come
that,
on.
I got a lot of feedback from folks last week, and I appreciate people listening at all, let alone engaging with the conversation that I'm trying to have here. Because I really am trying to have it in good faith. I'm not just here to whinge and whine about the stuff that didn't work for me. And a lot of folks just specifically talking about some of the elements of like, Soul not recognizing that this isn't OSHA, that it's
Yeah.
May. I know Josh Leamer, friend of the podcast, was really frustrated by this week. I was as well. I'm
Yeah.
much less hung up on like the force sensitivity of it all and the fact that the girl's got a tattoo on her forehead. Like this is actually my point of contention that I think. And so a lot of folks, Aston and Austin Smith talking about how they loved this episode. They
Mhm.
notably joined me for Tales of the Sith to talk about it when it aired a couple of months ago. And Aston was just talking about, I read that as Soul just being out of
Did you call
sorts.
it Tales of the Sith?
Yes.
Was it Tales of the Jedi?
No, that was last year. It was Tales of the Sith this year.
What? Oh, that's cool. Well, now I'm just mixed up.
You did just indict yourself for not knowing what podcasts we're producing on our network, but it was Tales from the Sith.
Whoops.
You made me the graphic, Taylor. You made it for us.
I swear it said Jedi.
Am I making it up? Was last year Tales from the Sith? No, it was definitely Tales from the Sith this year, Tales from the Jedi last year. But also in July of 2024, my brain is not at its
I don't
best,
know.
you guys. So I may be misnomering. And if Taylor is right, I expect you all to come for my wig
No,
after
don't
this
come
thing
for
is
his wig.
released.
He doesn't have one. It's great
That's
curly
true. I
hair.
don't. This is attached to my face. I
But
don't even
anyway.
the point that I was getting to was that Aston had kind of said, and I think it's a really fair take. Look, man, Saul is out of sorts. He just watched all his
Yeah.
people get killed. He's afraid of what happened. He's been completely overwhelmed by this enemy, and he's missing some of the details. And I really think that that's a fair read. I don't think that that's a big logic leap to make, but I think that it's like the Cortosis stuff and some of the other things where I feel like I have to make these leaps outside of the show to
Nice.
justify some of the calls here. And so May drinking the water, like I'm okay with
Oh,
it because
sure.
I'm like, right, there you go. Drink. This is where you guys, the listeners, drink. OSHA drinking the water in the cave. Like, I don't hang up on that because I am like, you did get stabbed and left for dead, and you're
Yeah.
probably super
Super
dehydrated.
thirsty. Yeah.
Presumably, this guy has taken you off a planet onto a spaceship, traveled across the galaxy, landed the planet, and then had to transport you across all of this water. You're on the beach. I know how being out in the sun, the salt, it really sucks all the moisture right out of your body. So she woke up thirsty. I know what
It's
that's
super
like.
It's fair. And again, it's like another nit that you can pick. And I feel like there was something else in this season where I'm like, OSHA, what are these decisions that we're making that are not like
It was
helpful for you?
grabbing the moth on the tree. It was walking through the dark, haunted
Right.
forest and grabbing the living creature on the tree before we knew what it was.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Don't touch random things. Don't drink things that you don't know what they are.
I'm
But
like
I
ranting and
understand.
raving about all this stuff, but the Persephone thing hit me a little bit. I've just been
Yeah,
thinking about some Greek mythology as we're digging into our Wheel of Time recently, and I'm
sure.
reaching back for a lot of that. And so it was very front of mind. This
Mhm.
because especially it's right there in the title, you guys. Corruption, corrupt, like
Mhm.
teach corrupt, and so it feels to me like this is the first step on a path.
Yeah. I think that what I do love is watching Osha. Like, there's just a fun part to me. Like you've been saying all season, like the sort of switch of May and Osha, right? And like it's just fun, and I understand like why if Osha truly did like fail out of Jedi school, like, and for her to just kind of forget about it, move on, like try to make something else of her life,
Mm-hmm.
and like making these strong relationships, like Soul like mentioned it to not Osha, to May, of like you've always had this relationship with him even though he's just a little droid. And yeah, Osha has all of these like really strong relationships that she didn't and doesn't want to let go of, which I love. I love the corruption. I think it's cool. I'm like following it. But can I say something while talking about Master Soul?
You can. It's your
He's
podcast.
he's the big bad, right? Soul is the big bad. I think he has to be. He totally has to be. Right? Like, come on.
I
He totally
don't
has
know.
to be.
So let's stop down to talk about it for a minute.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about Teach Corrupt. We have the inversion of the two sisters. I really appreciated the way that they chords us off in these pairings, though I
Mhm.
do feel like it lacked a little bit of momentum coming out of this energy. But uh, Soul and May on the ship, and she's obviously deceiving him,
Mhm.
and is now kind of changed her mind back. It seems like she may be trying to go forward and making this kind of assassination attempt,
Right?
but
She like
he's
tries
gonna.
to kill him, like she's like holding the knife, her little throwing knife or whatever.
We'll
And I'm
talk about it more at the end here, but just to like focus in on the Soul thing, I want to like
yes,
focus on
please,
this
please,
idea
please.
that you're presenting before the chaos takes my brain.
Yeah, wash away.
So to me, the resolution we are driving to, there's two kind of reasonable outcomes. I guess three, but I think one of them is highly unreasonable and will really leave me angry. But so reasonable outcome number one,
Mhm.
I mean, we're coming back to like a reunion of the sisters, right? There will be some point where both these sisters will be put face to face, and Darth Manny's going to be there, and Saul's going to be there. So option one is Osha falls to the corruption and does
Mhm.
some real dark stuff, and is like, "Yes, Darth Manny, I am your acolyte." Maybe she even kills him at the end of it, and like, oh my god, she's the big bad, but she falls to the dark side, and
Yeah.
she falls to this corruption. That's a resolution that, like, I don't know that I'll be happy with, but I would find satisfying and appreciate
Mhm.
narratively. There's option two, which I think is less likely given what we know about what the showrunners have said and their kind of intentionality here. Option two is the two of them are reunited again, and Osha's like, I was wrong. I've made a terrible mistake. And the forces of the light unite to kind of take down Bad Master Manny or whatever they're going to do. Conflict, final fight. He gets away alive after being stabbed in the stomach with a lightsaber, whatever it is, right?
Right.
But Osha returns to the light, right?
Mhm.
That's the other satisfying. Option three, we get to the end that it's all like a big gaping cliffhanger that resolves none of this, which I really doubt is going to happen and would be insanely frustrating if it
Mhm.
does. So that said, I'm not reading Soul as the big bad. I think I am reading Osha as the big bad. And I think
Okay.
that, like, at the end of the day, like, Kymir is actually the big bad because he's whispering these sweet nothings in her ear. And I think that
Mhm.
she's going to kill Master Soul at the end of this thing. And we're going to be like, ah, and then we'll see what happens. I mean, this is all my conjecture and
Yeah.
speculation and like conjecture and speculation. So it is, but that's kind of what I read. So talk to me about your interpretation of Soul as the big bad. Like, what do you mean by that?
So I guess it's just the little drops, and I don't like there's not a lot of evidence for this. It's just like a feeling. Like and the way that Soul by the end of the episode, his vibe has completely shifted. Like I just feel like just a completely different person by the end of the episode. I don't like him
I mean,
at the
very
end.
notably, Soul cannot figure it out on his own. It takes Basil, which let me stop down here. I know I've been like memeing a little bit about how great Basil is. And I know that I've beat up Pip, like straight up in the power ranking of Star Wars droids. Like Pip's pretty close to the bottom, you guys. I'm not like
Crazy.
counting him with like the mouse droids and stuff like that, but like, man, B2 emo, he is not, is all I'll say. Uh, but so the practical effects are really awesome. Like Basil is so good, dude.
I
The
love
little baby like elephant anteaters, whatever the hell, they're so fantastic.
that.
The practical effects were like really, really good. And I loved watching Basil like hobble around inside the ship and try to beat up May. Like that's fun. That's fun, dopey Star Wars stuff that I like. And it really looks great. But so notably, Master Saul cannot put the pieces together by himself. I
But could
think
it be like a
Basil
triple bluff? Like could Master Soul be like
Taylor,
deceiving May?
if
Like
it's a triple bluff, we have bluffed too far. That's my take, at least. But it seemed to me like Basil is ultimately going to tip off at the end. The power comes back. The lighting in the
Mhm.
ship was very cool while the power was down. I liked it in the blue. I liked Soul weeping and like seeing that emotion that he has been
Mhm.
trained to repress and contain and consolidate in that way and like coming out. And so then he is going to blast May with OSHA's blaster gun, and then we're going
Mhm.
to take her hostage and we're going to shut off the comms and run away from the rest of the Jedi. And I've been waiting a long time to talk about this, and I think it's supposed to feel more menacing than it is. Like, I just am at a point that Lee Jung-jae is the heart and soul of this show to me at this point. We have
Literally
talked
the
a little
soul.
bit about how part of what's frustrating about losing Jackie and Yort for me last week is I was really emotionally onboarded with them, and I'm kind of not with Mayor Osha, and
Yeah.
that still stands true to this week. And at this point, I'm a little bit like, are there any two characters on the show that want to be with each other or enjoy one another's company?
Mhm.
And other than maybe Pip and Basil, I'm reaching for it, man, because like I don't think that there are, but I do think that the only person who I can empathize with, who I can look to as compassionate, who I feel has love guiding his actions is Master Soul. And
Okay.
if it turns out that he willfully did some like really terrible stuff to the witches and the children and is going to now like go full heel turn, I don't think that they've done the work to satisfyingly like make that shift. Whereas if they do it with OSHA, I may not be satisfied, but I will acknowledge that I think they've done the work to do it. Is
Mhm.
that fair?
Yeah. I'm just like my brain is going 1,000 different places because I'm like, what if there was some way that Soul and the Jedi show up to the island
Mm-hmm.
and like go to take out the witches? I just like I keep coming back to the fact that Soul and Indara, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yup.
Okay, I keep
Nailed it.
questioning myself with her name. I don't know why.
And
Um,
Kelnaka and Torben.
yes. But I keep coming back to the fact that Soul and Indara went back, and Indara felt so like she was just trying to move on and like very business about everything. And
Mm-hmm.
Soul is a very emotional and like in touch with his emotions kind of person for a Jedi. And I just am like, so Kamir got the scar on his back from his master. The fact that Soul told us that he was taken when he was 4 years old feels like such an important detail, and I'm am just pulling red string. Like, at this
I
point,
do
I
think
should have
that
red string
that's a
everywhere.
success on the part of the show, though. They
Yeah,
got you grabbing at everything and thinking
yeah.
and imagining what it might be. And so, in the way that I know that I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth and that I'm not sold on everything that they're doing here
Mhm.
narratively, in terms of it's really the course of our plot and the characterization of the people. That's where I feel like the writing is like most missing. We captured some really big philosophical ideas in kind of poetic ways this episode, and I can acknowledge that, but I think the characters are too underbaked for me to lock into it. I'm not like thinking about a lot of this stuff. So the fact that you are, I think, is a victory for them. You know,
Yeah.
I'm cleaving into the known quantities that I have in Star
Mhm.
Wars more than I should probably. And that's, I think, part of my frustrations that I'm finding and part of where that friction's coming from, right? That
Yeah.
you're asking me to sand away the rough edges of what I know about lightsaber combat because you just threw cortosis in the mix and I don't know what that is yet,
Yeah.
right? So I can accept that some of it is with great intention. And I think it's cool that you're a little all over the place. Let's talk about Darth Manny for a minute.
Yeah.
So Darth Manny shows up like a freaking ghost from the treetops, murders everybody, takes Osha, not May, back to the planet that is not Octo and probably Maldemnik. He posts up in his little Cortosis cave, and now, Taylor, it's time for a bath, baby. And so we're going to strip down and we're going to scrub clean, and Ocean's sneaking and creeping around, and the rocks will pass
So
without
terribly.
trace action. And I have seen pretty universally that the people who are loving this show have dubbed episode 6 of The Acolyte, Teach Corrupt, as the horniest piece of Star Wars media to have ever been created. I saw a tweet the other day that absolutely leveled me and gave me great joy amidst a
Oh my
time
God.
of great stress, where I was like, it basically said sex in Star Wars is like showing an ankle in Victorian times. And I
Literally.
laughed so hard because it's so true.
I did write in my notes. I was like, when there's just a few things with this scene. Number one, OSHA sneaking, F. F on the
I'm
sneaking.
so glad you're
Terrible.
saying that, because that's a thing I was actively looking to not complain about, but which just didn't work for me in the
I
moment.
was like, she's. I mean, there's a part where probably she knows that she's like he's sensing her or something. I don't know.
It's a
Whatever.
little, I think
It was
it's like, what
silly.
is it? Kim Kardashian, the Kim Kardashian thing of the gif of her like popping out from behind the trees. I think it's definitely a
Maybe.
Kardashian. I can't really pick them out of them.
I can't help you there. I'm so sorry. But so okay. She follows him to the bath, grabs his lightsaber while he's in the middle of the water, holds it up, and says, "Don't move." I'm like, what are you gonna do, OSHA?
This guy just hosed a trained
In the
Jedi with
water.
their weapons while he couldn't see.
Damn, what are we doing here? But so, and then after that, like he like stands up, he's like, "Oh, I forgot to do this. I'd like to put my clothes on." And I'm like, Star Wars nudity is actually insane. Like that's
It's kind of crazy. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And I really appreciate that a lot of people are loving this and they're really shipping it hard and they're all in on this. We talked a little bit last week about the Reylo fans, because I think that the Reylo fans really loved Willow, which is like really unironically one of my favorite shows of the last 5 years. And like, I love the Reylo fans for loving Willow, but I really don't love Reylo. I feel like there's something inherently that I'm very uncomfortable with about all of that, which I'll talk about a little bit. But
that's
I want
a healthy thing.
Okay.
That's
It's
good.
okay to be unhealthy fandom, but like just know that you're
Absolutely
being
is.
unhealthy. I guess I want to talk about the scar though, again, before the chaos takes me. Taylor.
Yes.
So we see the scar.
Yes.
And she's gonna ask him later, where'd you get the scar? Somebody who threw me away. All right, drama queen. We see you. Put your helmet back on. Tough guy. Right. But and she's like, your Jedi master? And he does not answer.
Yeah.
Right. He's letting her lead the answers in this moment, which I think is pointed, especially because he told her, by the way, don't trust me. You should not trust me. But we should, I think, maybe be paying attention to that. Notably, Taylor, we saw this vicious scar on his back. What did we also see this episode? A lightsaber whip for the first time ever in live action Star Wars.
Yeah.
Am I like putting together two things? Is this like correlation that is not equivalent?
That could be a thing. That could definitely be a thing.
Master Vernestra seems a little mean, man, and like a little bit rigid and inflexible, dare I say, unlike her whip.
Yeah. Wow. When she pulled that whip out, I was like, whoa.
Did you love that?
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
They
that.
really doubled down with like, look, it's pink and it's a whip.
She killed me this episode. Her and Mog, this guy who's like following her around.
Just Kupo for the Final Fantasy fans. If we get a Mog sighting, we got a Kupo.
Kupo. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not a Final Fan, an FF person.
You would be if you ever met Mog. I'll tell you that.
Okay. All right. All right. Noted. So, and I also have to say, while we're just talking about the sort of shipping between
Yes.
Chimere, is it Chimere?
I think it's Chimere. I think
Okay.
that like Leslye
like I should go
Headland's
back.
approved ship name is Oshamir. She likes the whole Osha name. She's really in on it. This is huge Rian Johnson, The Last Jedi kind of pay it forward, the enemies to lovers arc. This is a
Everybody
huge part
loves
of why people love the Reylo ship. I'm not inherently off board on that. Like, dare I say it again, but I will invoke our beloved Willow, dark fantasy adventure film from 1988, directed by Ron Howard. That's like Round Howard, but Ronner. The whole like Saoirse Mad Mardigan love affair is one of my great love affairs in cinema, and like it's very like enemies to lovers. It is that. I've seen this done in a bunch of ways that I appreciate. So I'm just want to give that caveat before I go forward.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is me just being out of touch with my shipping fandom, like 15-year-old self, but I was much more caught up on the fact that Kamira mentioned the Jackie and Osha relationship and was like, that would have been one-sided as well. Like, you wouldn't have gotten what you wanted from that. And that I was hung up on because that was confirmation that there was something between Jackie and Osha.
Dafne Keen notably had said in some press, and you always take it with a lot of salt when the actors say it, not the writers, that, yeah, we were definitely supposed to be reading that Jackie at least had a crush on Osha if not reciprocated,
Oh.
right? But so we get to this thing, and I know people are really all aboard the tension between these two. And Leslye Headland had said in this interview, she talks about it a lot and about how, very notably, there is this pain and this trauma that Osha is carrying with her as a child after whatever happened at this fire. It doesn't actually matter whether or not we know what happened there. And I'm editorializing a little bit to like contextualize her point. But the
Right.
idea is that she's had this hugely traumatic experience as a child,
Yeah.
and she comes from that directly kind of into the Jedi training, where the
Mhm.
Jedi training is no attachment. This idea that she needs to kind of compartmentalize and box away all of that emotion, right?
Mhm.
So now we have Kymir kind of seducing her. And I think that that is the right word, because I think it is sexually charged and it is kind of intimate, even though
Mhm.
that's maybe in the subtext,
Sure.
where he's telling her this idea that your emotions are a valid part of you and you can connect with them. So in the way that Leslye says it, to use her exact words, she's in extreme denial about that, the pain that she's in, because she feels like she's not allowed to be angry, and she's in an enormous amount of pain over her sister and their history, and she also feels like she's not allowed to feel that. So
Mhm.
someone coming in and saying, actually, feeling all those things is not only okay, but it could restore your spiritual foundation. It's almost too much for her. And here's the point where I take real issue, because Leslye Headland says, I don't think that's manipulation. I think that he's telling her the truth. When he says semantics, he means it. He says, why wouldn't you use what is obviously the part of you that you need to explore the most? So I just want to put the question to you before I give my 2 cents on like how I read this. But is Kymir being manipulative here? Is he manipulating this woman in a way that is not comfortable for you? Or does it read to you as her empowering her and trying to kind of help her self actualize on all of this repressed trauma that she's got? Because I think these are the two fundamental viewpoints. That
Yeah.
seems like what Leslye is advocating.
So it's difficult because it's like it's both. Like, he is using this like genuine kind of acceptance, and I imagine his goal is to get her to the dark side. So he has like an intention behind his this manipulation, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't mean what he's saying, but he has a goal in mind. So he
Mhm.
is absolutely manipulating her. Like, even if like I said, if his words are true and he means what he says, he still has an end goal of getting her to the dark side.
I really appreciate that stance, because I think I was leaning a little more of like, no, it's obviously manipulation. And I think it's really disingenuous to present it any other way. This is a thing that I have. We're talking about House of the Dragon also here. And I don't want to spoil that show, but there's a lot of like violence and manipulation, especially like sexual violence directed against women in that show, that is problematic in its depiction sometimes. I should couch that. It's less present in House of the Dragon than it was in Game of Thrones, its predecessor. House of the Dragons, the prequel series to Game of Thrones, for anybody who's unfamiliar with those properties. And Game of Thrones especially kind of was a real talking point in this greater conversation of how we depict this kind of violence against women on television, and the kind of responsibility of a male writer's room to diversify the perspective and bring some females into the room to offer a different perspective than the singularly male one. So I just come away from this, and I felt it similarly in The Last Jedi with the Reylo thing of like, dude, Kylo Ren is a character I really like having in Star Wars. Also, he destroyed planets. Like, he destroyed millions of people. And that is really unambiguously evil. Evil. Not dark side force using. Capital letters EVIL. So we go back to like the original bad boy, Darth Vader. And like, yes, Vader was also evil. He killed children. He killed the younglings, Taylor. The younglings.
Oh gosh.
But the man who comes to redeem him at the end is his son, who's showing him a parent's or a son's forgiveness for his flawed parent, which is so fundamentally different to me than, especially when we're looking at characters like Rey and like Osha. I want to be like thoughtful in how I say this, but my impression of both these women is they are very similar in terms of a measure of innocence, if not naivety, that comes with them. These are not like dark, edgy, dangerous, like people. They're relatively innocent, and they are introduced to these men who are leading them down a path of like corruption. And so I'm sorry, but I have like a real thing that jams in my craw when we get to the sexy scene of Chimera and Osha. And I'm a little bit like, dude, you just murdered children. You just killed 7 people in cold blood. And you can use your retroactive bullshit justification. All I want is to be free. I get it. And I will acknowledge that the Jedi, as this galactic police force, have a position of intolerance for a diaspora of philosophies. We understand that it's either the Jedi way or no way. So that is a fair statement, but let's get real for a second, bro. These people did not come out of nowhere hunting you down to assassinate you until the child assassin that you trained began killing them. At which point, the confrontation that you engineered after manipulating the other innocent girl in this story, who presumably, I don't know because I have no idea the backstory here, you got your hands on when she was younger and even more influenceable. You manipulated May to create this conflict, to instigate this moment where you now will kill all these people. And I really appreciate that Osha challenges him on that. What about Yord? What about Jackie? And to me, man, it's all just a bunch of like thin equivocations that we get at the end. And I appreciate that a lot of people are having fun because I think the writing is strong. I think Kamir's stance is articulated powerfully. And I think that there is flaws within the Jedi Order that we can acknowledge and identify and talk about. But I am nowhere near a place where any of this is even remotely justified behavior. This is all really toxic and manipulative. And it feels weird to me, Taylor. Like, I kind of get a little bit put off with like the enthusiasm which people want to see these two get together. And like, I don't know. I get that this is me being very uptight as a fan, and I'm not here to ruin anybody else's good time. But this is the like voice in my head yelling at me when I watch this stuff that I'm like, this is not sexy. It's really gross.
So, okay. Number one, this is the reaction you're supposed to have to this type of thing, right? But there is such a large group of people where this enemies to lovers, we're like ignoring all of the bad stuff, and we're jokingly being like, I can fix him.
Yeah. I get that.
that's-
And I do just want to know, like, I understand I'm talking about fiction here, and I'm not
We all
actually
know he's
indicting
bad.
anybody.
We all know he's evil, and like we're gonna see what happens with that. But like, no, that's totally valid. He's super creepy and is like very manipulative and clearly has a goal in mind. And it's one of these things where like somebody who's doing like some of the best villains are they think they're right?
I mean, he's a great villain, right? And
Yeah.
I do think that he has like I think there's an element. I keep invoking it because I just have to, where it's a little bit of like Alan Rickman and Kevin Costner in these scenes with Manny and Amandla. And I don't want to be too critical. I've not seen a lot of the rest of her body of work, but I just feel like one person's really like acting the hell out of these scenes, and they're unbalanced again in a way that I'm like, okay, you know. So I appreciate it, and I'm very look. I talk pretty often about my divorce and my ex-wife on these podcasts. So like I get it. I can fix her. Like, and I want to just enunciate the point of this that is real
Yeah.
about the cliche, right? Taylor, like, ladies love a
Yes.
bad boy. But
Yeah.
like,
I
do
think
they
we're
love the bad boy
recognizing
who just murdered her friends?
no, we're ignoring that and just living in the moment here of of Ocean come here on this beautiful remote planet, and
It
he's
is.
taking a bath, he's making soup or something, like, he's
It's a very
fully
romantic getaway. I would
yeah.
honeymoon there.
Yeah, we're putting episode 5 in its box, and we're moving on, and we're gonna do this now, apparently.
I hope that
Yeah.
folks are not too like frustrated hearing me express these thoughts, but they are really like dominant thoughts as I engage with this. And it's a little bit of the takeaway that I've been maybe slowly coming to the realization of over the last couple of weeks that, like, okay, there is, I think, a really dedicated fan base that is loving this show so much. And man, that makes me happy because
Yeah.
none of these folks deserve to be lambasted or review bombed or to become lightning rods for a real bad faith portion of the community that is using this venue to fight a culture war that has nothing to do with Star Wars. And I really appreciate that. But part of my kind of journey over these last couple of weeks is a little bit of like, this show is just not for me, maybe, you know, and like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Not every Star Wars thing needs to be directly targeted at me in that way. I just, you know, we have this podcast. We come in to talk about it every week, and it's a thing that I try not to put too much energy on in terms of my frustration about The Last Jedi. But I feel like I don't want to overstate, like, oh, it's dangerous or it's irresponsible. But I do think there's a world where, like, if a male showrunner like had stuff like this, it would not be received as well, and that like sometimes makes me uncomfortable. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? If we have to take the extra step, it's a thing that we talk about a lot, even in the Wheel of Time book club, that just because we know the authorial intention does not absolve the mess in the execution
Yeah.
or the bad representation, you know? And I don't want to go as far as to say any of those things. I'm not trying
Right.
to actually like impugn any of the creatives here for doing something irresponsible, but it does make me really uncomfortable in a way that's like very removed from Star Wars and has nothing
Yes.
to do with the Force or the lightsabers or the little elephant rats on the beach.
I think that there is hopefully an understanding from the audience. This guy is bad and manipulative, but this is very targeted and fits into like a YA novel type of space. So I hope, guys, Kamir is bad. Don't root for him, please. He's a bad person.
I mean, I invoked House of the Dragon before because we very notably, the fandom there loves to ship the most toxic character on that show with people too. And I'm always like, we realize that like this is a very bad man, right? This is a very bad man who is a
Let's just
liar
get
and
that
does
out of the
terrible
way.
things. And
Yeah.
it's one of these dumb things where it just sometimes hits me sideways. That said, I feel like the people who really like this episode loved this episode and came away from it like, man, this was such powerful Star Wars. The philosophy. I know a lot of folks like, and me to a certain extent will include myself in that category, felt like this is a bit slow. We didn't really advance things in the way that I wanted. And I saw some folks like, man, you guys have forgotten what character development looks like. So in that way, I do laud them for slowing it down to do some of this character development that I think you and I have been talking about has been missing for May and Osha so far. It feels like it's a little late in the day for me, and like the narrative structure that we've gone with of this nonlinear storytelling is working against my ability to love the show as much as I'd hoped in the beginning. And part of where I'm coming in, like, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed in the last couple of weeks, is gosh, I was so excited for this show. And I thought, like, oh, this might be the one that they're making for me, you know? And so, in that way, I think I'm sorry if my disappointment is bleeding over in these podcasts. I hope at least that it's kind of fun for you guys to listen to me get all apoplectic about this dumb nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having a good time.
We didn't really talk about it much, but should we talk about like May and Sol on the ship a little bit? Like this is the other part of it where I am feeling this kind of whiplash. So you were ready to turn yourself over to the Jedi until you're fighting them. And notably, some of the feedback in the Discord last week, I might be misattributing, but I believe it was also Aston Smith who had said she didn't attack until Jackie tried to arrest her for this crime, right? And okay, I can accept that. But so we're now on the ship and she's gone undercover and is snuck onto the ship with Sol. She pulls the knife on him. And it is seemingly this moment of like, are you going to try to kill this guy? Like, where are we at? I just can't follow with you anymore. And again, the part of me that feels like I need to do homework outside of the show or come to my own conclusions about the decisions of the character. Part of me is like, well, she's just trying to get the hell away. Like, it's less about fulfilling this quest of murder Sol, and it's more about I have to kill this guy to steal this ship to fly to the other side of the galaxy so that Darth Manny cannot find me. And I guess I can accept that, but I just don't know where to be rooted with this character anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm very confused. I like the confusion is also persisting. Yeah.
I'm more on board, at least. I understand where May is at, and I feel like where Osha is at. I have a better sense of Osha's motivations and what's driving her at this point, even though I have a lot of frustration with her decision making, you know, at the point that the guy's like, go take my ship and leave. Like, why do you not take the ship and leave? And I get it, because she is, in fact, falling to the corruption. Like, his words make sense to her. She does put the helmet on at the end. And so we'll see if they're able to do this in a way that maybe turns me fully around. And in 2 weeks, I'm sitting here like, I was way too hard on the middle section of this show. And I feel like it's satisfying in the end.
I hope that this next episode, which this one, I think, right? Where we
I think this will be the mirror of episode 3. Yes.
Yeah. So I hope that we come out of it understanding a lot about May's motivation, why she's been doing the things that she has. I also, is it crazy for me to be like, how does May know how to like fix a ship and factory reset?
We didn't talk about this, but this is a bit of an issue. I think May did a murder, Taylor.
I'm so mad. How dare she?
I think May did a droid murder.
How dare she set him? I can't stand it.
I think that she doesn't really know. She certainly know Osha, but I think that that's the point of the factory reset on Pip, to be like, I do not need any of your carefully evolved personality traits getting in my way here. I need you to function as a machine that can fix the ship. And so she resets him and murders the droid. And this is part of what I was talking about before, where I think even in The Rise of Skywalker, episode 9, that we all hate.
How you remember the name.
I know. I did it. My brain's like really like a ping pong ball today, just like bouncing around off the walls. But in The Rise of Skywalker, which is pretty much hot garbage, and we all agree about that. Like, it's bad, man. It's really not good. But there's like at least some like cool moments in there, you know, and I don't even know. I don't want to talk. I got myself to the end of the thought in my head, and I'm just going to stop myself. I don't know why I thought it would be a good idea to talk about The Rise of Skywalker.
That's okay. It's okay.
But I was going to say, I think even in The Rise of Skywalker, even in every Star Wars property, there's people that seemingly enjoy being in company with one another.
Yeah.
And even when it's Han and Luke giving each other hell, like Obi-Wan and Anakin, they're like the best buddies in the prequel movies.
Yeah.
And so, as bad and warty and imperfect as the prequels are, that core, like I can always on board with that. And I am at this point in the Acolyte where I'm like, man, none of these people actually like each other at all. There's nobody who is glad to be where they are. This show, and we know, like, I'm not a big comedy guy. I like to linger in sad feelings, but I'm like, this show is like feels pretty hopeless. Like, it's dark, Taylor, and
Yeah.
it's lingering in darkness, and all of that could be awesome, except that I like feel horrible for every character on the show pretty much at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know what I'm rooting for. I have no idea, man. Like, Vernestra seems like dispassionate and potentially dangerous. Chimera is like very creepy and on the edge of like grooming. May and Osha are both making me nuts. There's no logic whatsoever. Soul has evolved from like, oh, I like this guy, to he might be the bad guy and he's an idiot. Pip, he's dead. We just like resurrected him at Factory 6. It leaves me with Basil, and I don't know what he's saying. So I'm not even sure that I can ostensibly agree with him.
The attack of Basil and Pip on May was maybe my favorite thing. It was
MVP
so
moment
funny.
of episode 6.
It
I'm
was
100% there. It's the
so
best.
funny.
And where like I'm maybe not being kind to some of the performance of Amandla Stenberg. It's a really tough gig to have to play two separate parts this way.
Yeah.
But her reaction as the Basil Muppet like kicks her shins and stuff, it's so ridiculous that I loved it. This is the kind of, again, like, yes, good ridiculous, good. When she screams as she gets like blasted in the face with the gross oil slick or whatever, it's like,
So good.
We'll see what happens on episode 7. For anybody who's still hanging out with us for the duration, I hope that you're having fun with us along with my rocky ride on the Acolyte. I really appreciate having you here to like ground me out in some of my angrier takes, Taylor.
Yeah, I'm a Taurus. It's what I do.
Yeah, it's very helpful. Any final thoughts about this episode before we part ways?
I would like to be friend with Moog. Seems like the office gossip and like a really fun individual.
You liked Mog. Yeah, cool.
I did.
Kupo.
So there was, I have to like call it the moment when Vernestra is like, he's like talking about, they got the message from Soul, like something has gone terribly wrong. He's lost his whole team. And he's like, I don't know where they are. Like, and Vanessa's like, okay, I'm going myself. This is a personal matter. I need to take care of this. And I know where they are. And he's like, how do you know? She's like, because I sent him there. And this camera shot of Mog, he's just like, he looks behind him like, did anybody else hear that? And like follows her. And I'm like, this guy is fun.
This was another important note from Leslye Headland, which I think we'll maybe see a little more of in these next couple of episodes. But I think it's supposed to be kind of indicative of the hubris of the Jedi and the way that these are very autonomous, kind of compartmentalized missions, that Vernestra just sort of made this call and people don't really know what's going on. Also, a footnote for all the whining I did that Soul leaves the bodies. Yes, maybe it is Jedi protocol that he was supposed to leave the bodies and then go call the distress team, and they come back and they say we have to prepare the bodies for burial. So I'm glad that it's not standard Jedi practice to leave corpses rotting in the woods to be eaten by umber moths, especially not Jackie Lon. She deserves better.
How dare they show us Jackie's body like that?
How
that was cold.
Dare they? It really is cold. They really are. In that way, like, mad props, Leslye Headland, for not like pulling those punches. I don't love that you did it, but I love your commitment to the choice in that way. Notably, some of the other symbology as Chimera gets up out of the bath. Did you notice the clothes there?
Well, I noticed eventually that he was wearing white and Osha was in black.
Right. So she's not in like, she is in full black by the end, I guess, but she's wearing May's kind of outfit because we've done the clothes trade. So she's in gray, this like ambiguous in between color, as he puts on the much more traditional looking light beige Jedi tunic to like warm her up. And something that like also was noted in this Collider article that I thought was interesting was the way that they've just inverted some of the gender coding between Chimera and Osha, in that she's like this mechanic and these very kind of utilitarian, even in the uniform of her sisters, like, and he's wearing these flowy clothes with the flowy hair, and even just the way that I noticed it a lot in the movement, which was a thing that it felt a little alien to me. But the way she's moving, especially once she gets the lightsaber, like
Yeah.
the woman never unclenches her shoulders. There is
No.
just like this like hulking, lurching kind of tension as she's leaned over, and he's so like kind of languid and fluid and dramatic in the way that he moves,
Yeah.
that there's some traditionally like feminine traits that they're definitely kind of layering over Chimere and masculine traits on Osha. And so I guess that's fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun.
The symbolism, I think, is good. The themes are good. The music was tremendous. I really love a lot of the visual production. Like, there is so much stuff to appreciate about the Acolyte, even though the plot is kind of losing me as we find it. But
yeah, I'm excited for these next 2 episodes. I hope we find out. I'm so sad that we didn't get a single thing from Soul. That ending was so hurtful.
I guess that's how you do a cliffhanger.
But we're not even gonna get an answer next episode.
No, we're not. It's going to be 2 weeks because next week will be a flashback. So, I mean, maybe we will. Maybe we will.
Maybe I don't.
Shouldn't
Yeah,
count our
we
chicken.
don't know until it happens.
Shouldn't
but-
count our elephant rats on the beach before they hatch. Did you like how they were like with their little trunks, like hugging each other with their little baby elephant?
Oh, Osha passes and they're like, "Don't look at us." And then she leaves and she's like, "Oh my gosh, okay."
They really are adorable. I would buy that
so
Acolyte merch and
cute.
put it on my desk. All in on that. Taylor, we'll be back in 1 week's time talking about episode 7. Until then, what do you got going on? Where can people find you?
People can find me at Ronnie422 out on the internet. Rich, you and I are also doing What Did I Miss over here on Screen and Page. This week, we're rating the 14 properties that we have watched thus far. And then we'll get back to our regularly scheduled program next week. And we're back on the Wheel of Time wheel. We're reading The Great Hunt. We just released recently our first little part, which was the prologue to chapter 7. Hop in there. That's very fun. I'm excited to get back into Wheel of Time.
Very excited. We're reading up through chapter 17, choices of the Great Hunt, for our next section. I'm talking about House of the Dragon every week with Latanya. If you want to hear me talk about a show that is working for me better than The Acolyte, you could listen to that. The Boys, I'm breaking down weekly with Kevin Mahadeo. I feel like that show has been killing it. We'll talk about this week's episode a little bit different. There's a lot going on over here. The Wheel of Time Book Club. What did I miss? Go follow everything. Go follow the social medias at Screen Page Pod. Go follow us on YouTube, Screen and Page over on YouTube for some live video podcasts coming to you over the next couple of months. Thank you all for hanging out and putting up with my dark energy yet again this week. We will be back in 1 week's time. But until then, may the Force be with you.